pro with your head.
Yeah, but
Hey everyone, welcome along again. It's great to see you on a Wednesday evening. Thanks for spending an hour of your time with us here. It's time again for our lockdown live stream. So whether you're at Shrewsbury Club or Homer's Facebook page or a number of the Mosaic sites that we operate, or even if you're watching us on YouTube, we're just delighted that you've taken a bit of time out. And we're covering a topic tonight that I think is really relevant in lockdown and is going to kind of be really relevant post-lockdown as well. We're looking at well-being, particularly in terms of how we keep ourselves positive and how we help not only with our physical health but also with our mental health and our mental well-being as well. So I've got, as you can see, a great panel to join me. So I'd like to welcome Laura and Lindsay and Emma. So Laura and Emma are kind of from our Shrewsbury club and both members there, but also work very relevantly in this arena, so their input's going to be great. And Lindsay is someone that I've known and worked with in the industry for longer than we both care to admit. So I know that Lindsay's got a huge amount that she can offer here. So I'll let them introduce themselves, and then we're going to get into the questions. It's the usual format here. If you want to in the comments, etc. We'd love to see your comments. We'd love to hear what you've got to say. And if you've got any questions that you want to pose to the guys as we go along, then we'll definitely take those as well. So it's great to have you along. But I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves so you know where they're from, and then we'll sort of kick off and get started. So we'll start in Shrewsbury. And Laura, as you're on the top of my screen. So tell us a little bit about what you do, and thanks again for joining along and welcome.
Thanks, Dave. I'm super pleased to be here. So thanks for having me. So I'm a health and habit change coach. I support people basically make changes in their health and help them really gain clarity, confidence and control around food, emotional eating, as well as other lifestyle areas. So it's not just food, it's sleep, exercise, stress levels, all those kinds of things as well. So, and I like to do it in a pleasurable way. So I'm not about, deprivation and restriction. It's all done in a pleasurable way, just to help people become the best version of themselves for them, their careers, and their family.
Brilliant. And we were talking just before we came on and went live. And although you might be based in Shrewsbury, you've literally got clients all around the world, including in Sydney, which must be a challenge with a time difference to kind of meet with them. Yeah. But that's the value and the benefit of online, isn't it? So
yeah,
anyway.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
And also, although we just discovered also you've not met before, both from the same town, both members of the club, but not actually met before. But Emma, thank you as well for joining in. I know we've been trying to get you involved with some of the stuff we were doing at the club. So great that we've finally made that happen tonight. And thanks for joining along. Tell us a little bit about what you're involved with.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm glad to be involved, Dave. Thanks. So I'm a leadership coach and I'm based here in Shrewsbury, Shropshire. And I specialise in I believe in a concept called personal leadership. And what that encompasses is it acknowledges that we have many opportunities to influence those around us, not just in the workplace, but at home as well. So I work with clients on both a one-to-one and a small team basis to support them develop an authentic style of leadership that enables them to inspire those around them to take 100% responsibility. And that can be relevant whether you're leading a team of 100 people or you're raising a family. So it really has very broad implications. So that's a bit about me.
Brilliant. I'm sure we'll find out a bit more about that as we go in to talk about some of the areas we're going to chat about later on. So last but not least, Lindsay, thank you so much for giving up your time and joining in. It's great to see you again. It's we've known each other for a long time, and explain a little bit about what you're up to at the moment, because you're really working on a real life project right now about well-being in our industry.
Yeah, exciting stuff. So Dave and I met I think in the last millennia, sadly. That's actually true, isn't it? That's quite worrying. So I started in the fitness industry. My degree was in health and fitness, but I've spent the last 15 years working in communications and engagement. So essentially, and I have a special interest in the mental health side of things. So essentially, I help organisations create healthy cultures. So my interest is really in the workforce, and I work both in and out of the fitness industry. I'm a mental health first aider and also a mental health first aid instructor, and all that has sort of got mixed together. And I'm the lead researcher on a project in the fitness industry. It's the first nationwide and sector-wide research project for employee mental health. So we're looking at all the workforce from self-employed to employees. So that's coming together right now, hoping that we will publish next week. So
Brilliant.
That's what I'm working on.
That's great. Well, look, let's get stuck into it. There's loads of people online. This is the highest number of people watching that we've had out of these series. So clearly it's a hot topic. Great to welcome along Claire again. She's always knows how to put comments in the box. And Claire, thanks for joining us again this week. And don't forget, if you want to be like Claire, pop in a comment or a question and we'll try and take that. So let's talk a little bit about we're talking about our kind of like our well-being. So talk about how we personally have found kind of like our lockdown experiences. And I think for many of us, certainly I've found lockdown 3 has been an awful lot harder than the first one. And I'm not quite sure why that is. But yeah, I'd love to hear how you guys have found lockdown yourself and how you've managed to sort of deal with all the extra challenges it's thrown at us. So Emma, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, I think that part of it has been, as I think we've discussed before, that it's the time of year has been terrible. So over the winter, a lot of us suffer from seasonal affective disorder. I know I have in the past, and so I think it was easy to feel down and then not realize actually there's a lot of environmental factors at play, and so rather than recognizing that for coping, it's actually let's be kind to ourselves and realize there's a lot on our plates at the moment that is outside of our control. And I've had clients report that they're experiencing sad as well, and they haven't experienced it before, and I can only assume it's because we've been so restricted and we can't do our normal activities that mitigate the impact of just the short days and the dismal weather. But it's just really, really challenging. And I think the abrupt nature of the latest guidelines and restrictions is pretty bad. We were coming up to Christmas, getting excited, even within the restrictions. There was a chance of seeing people, and then that got removed from us. So I think that was tough. And then the third lockdown, and it just felt like our feet were in cement. It certainly did for me. So it's a case of, when's it going to end? But I think time of year and various other factors have just been really tough. And I think that all I'm doing is just every time I get the opportunity to go out for a walk when the sun's shining, I take it. And just focusing on the little things that I really can control has really, really helped me. And so I'm finding that with my clients too. So rather than focusing on that we cannot control, just focus on that we can, and that can be quite empowering, even if it's just little things.
Sure. What about you, Lindsay?
Yeah, lockdown 3 has been an interesting one, hasn't it? I guess I vary. I think the interesting thing about the pandemic and sort of leaning a little on the research that we found is that there's no universal experience of the pandemic, and actually quite a lot of people in our survey said that their mental health was better as a result of the pandemic. And I think that comes from more time at home, more sleep, perhaps more time to exercise. My daughter in particular, she's 15, is fitter than she's ever been. She's eating what she eats really healthily. She's exercising every day. And actually going back to school she really wanted to go, but she's loved that control and that ability to be really fit. And, more family time, that's a blessing in some ways, perhaps not in others if you've been homeschooling. But I think it is, and I think that's how I feel too about the pandemic, that there's been some very mixed experiences, obviously some very low points. We've had bereavements, like a lot of people have in our circle. My husband was very unwell. But then there's been some real joys. So I have found the last one harder for, I think, all the reasons that Emma's mentioning, but also those support mechanisms aren't there, are they? The sort of things that you would normally lean on, and having been able to actually have some physical conversations with people in real life, you realize how rich an experience that is and how much you have missed it, and what that gives you, in the same way that, although it's lovely to see everybody on virtual, it's just not quite the same.
Yeah, I mean, I've been today to our head office, which is in Norwich, for the first time since this lockdown, and I must admit, I've been looking forward to it for most of the week, because it's just a chance to get out, and actually there's a couple of the team that are in the office as well, so to actually meet up face to face has been great. And that's kind of, I mean, Amy's made a really good point about how tough it is when you've got young kids at home, and it's that lack of face-to-face help, isn't it? Laura, what would I mean, you've also got some young kids. I know they're a bit older than it appears Amy's are, but how have you tried to cope with the whole lack of that face-to-face contact? Because it is really tough. I really miss that. I can't wait to get back and do some work in a coffee shop again, rather than, I love being at home, but it just, there's an atmosphere in the coffee shop that I miss so much. So yeah, what would you sort of say to Amy that's also struggled with that lack of face-to-face?
I mean, I totally feel where you're at with that. There's been a phrase that's been used a lot during the pandemic, which is, we're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. And as Lindsay was saying, everyone's experience is very different. And some of us will have time to exercise and plan the meals and do all the things, the self-care, and actually use the time to relax and do all these nourishing things for ourselves. But then when you also see the flip side of that, when you've got someone who has got, two really young children, or having to homeschool and work and all these other things that you've got to juggle. It's I think this time round, we just haven't been able to catch a break for so long. And I think that's what's kind of really compounded the effects this time for people who are juggling the homeschooling and, having young children at home. We need that exercise. They need that change of scenery. I totally get it. And I know it's crazy. I think when we first went into lockdown last year, businesses were thinking, oh, that's it, we don't need offices anymore. We're going to do with offices, everyone can work from home. This is great. But I think actually we're coming out of it now, just as you said, Dave. We really want to get out. We want to get back into the office. We want to get back to seeing people, because as human beings, we're social creatures. And actually, there's studies showing that being social is actually, it's good for our immune system. It boosts our mental health, all these things. Actually, we need that face-to-face contact. And, for anyone struggling, I know exactly what it was like. For me, I had a lot of people reach out to me and say, I'm in this situation, and actually I'm emotional eating. There's a lot of emotional eating going on. I'm out of routine. I actually find it hard to stay healthy, to look after myself. And really, it's in these times, the hard times, that leaning into the little healthy habits where we can are the ones that will really keep us resilient. So it's very much focusing on what you can do. What little thing each day will make the difference to you? What thing can you do? And just choose one thing, because those small hinges swing big doors. Don't think, well, I can't do all these things, so I'm not going to do any of them. What's one small thing that will make a difference in your life right now? And lean into that if you can.
I mean, it's really good.
I was going to say, I noticed on the chat, Caroline said she's had a really tough time with homeschooling. Amy's given birth. We've had friends who've buried life partners, and not been able to say a proper goodbye. These are significant life events that ordinarily one would never, ever, you wouldn't go to a funeral and not hug somebody. These are people who've left school without being able to say goodbye to their school friends. All these things that punctuate our life and are designed to give us the emotional experiences that we need and missing. I would just like to say as well, if there are people on here who are struggling at the moment, you don't need to struggle on your own. There are people that can help you right now. If you are in crisis, call 999. People will listen. Or if you are feeling low but you need help, you can go to NHS Choices. There are a range of help options on there. And also you can go on to hubofhope.co.uk, put in your postcode, and in there are lots of resources, but please don't struggle on your own. There is hope and a lot of people do want to help. So if you do need that, please do reach out.
And so what are some of the strategies, Emma, when you're sort of meeting with your people one-to-one, etc.? This is a unique situation that we're in. I mean, I know one thing for me that I really struggled with the first bit of the lockdown. I found that really tough. And actually for me, what sort of managed to make the situation get better is kind of what Laura was alluding to, was I just got into a routine, which I had to do. And the routine was get up, first thing, walk the dog, have a shower, have breakfast, sit down on my laptop. And once I got that cracked, it kind of gave the start of my day a bit of a routine and a bit of an anchor over which I could sort of plan the rest of my day. But I mean, what are some of the tactics for the people that are making comments here and people that are listening? And what would you, and when you talk to your clients, what sort of advice would you give about how to try and sort of plan this rather strange situation that we're in?
Well, I alluded to it earlier, and that was really very much focused on that you can control. And because life does feel a bit out of control at the moment, and it's worrying, but that's energy that is wasted because we cannot do anything about the government guidelines and rules and so forth, but we can control the little things. We can control how we choose to feed our family, how we choose to exercise. We can reach out and tell the people around us that we love them. You know, there are those small things that can be affirming to us and our nearest and dearest. One of the things I did is I invested in me. I spent a lot of time with doing professional development programs, and I'm still doing that. And I found that a very constructive way to spend my time because it gave that period purpose. And it's also enriched the service offering that I give to my clients. So I found that really helped give me focus. And I know a lot of people are using this period to really invest in them, whether that be looking at their health and well-being or professional development opportunities. So that's something that I've done, and I know clients have done. Another thing, it's a little thing, is that not being so target orientated.
Right.
Before lockdown, I was big into Strava, for example, and everything. I was always competing against myself, against the leaderboard, and I had a client in particular who is the same, and so I actually stopped monitoring my walks, my runs, my cycles, and realized, because there's a saying that if it's not on Strava, it didn't happen. And so it puts this huge amount of pressure on you. And I thought, well, actually, it did happen. I know it happened. My body knows it happened. And so actually, and he's been doing the same. And it's taken the pressure off. You can go out and enjoy the bike ride and actually enjoy the scenery rather than thinking, oh my gosh, my RPM's not high enough, and so, oh gosh, what if anyone sees that MPH? It's just and so it doesn't matter. That what you do see rather than your stats is the sunset, or so just engage with nature and just enjoy being present. And so mindfulness very much came into my approach, and the approach I encouraged my clients to take. Just to anything, to take pressure. We live in a very pressured world, and so I think it was a really good opportunity to take stock and try and remove pressure from ourselves wherever possible. So I did encourage clients to try and take stock and remove that pressure wherever possible.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I think so many people have actually had a bit more time to just appreciate what's around them than we do in our normal, really hectic rushing around everywhere. That's the one thing we've not been able to do is rush around. Lindsay, let's talk about it a bit more from a work perspective, and there's people on here talking about juggling the work-life balance, and that can be really difficult when all of that is at home. I mean, you alluded to, actually some people have found this a positive experience, which is great. But tell us a little bit about what you think you've picked up from a work experience about how we manage that work-life balance when actually there isn't the distinction between work time and home time.
So again, there's this whole thing of one size doesn't fit all. So depending on your personality type, for some people that's great, for some people that works really well for them, whereas for other people, and I think particularly if you do have young children, that can be a really tough juggle. But in some ways, I mean, my kids have met more of my clients, and whereas I used to go, and I noticed your daughter came in the room just now, whereas before it was sort of unprofessional. It's like, do you know what, I am at home, and my daughter had a singing exam. She's got a very powerful voice, and the person on the call could hear it. Now, I think we've humanized, in some ways we've humanized it, and I think it's been it's been quite a democratizing process. My husband, who works for a very big swanky company, said, when you've seen your chief exec sitting in a t-shirt with a baseball cap on in his daughter's bedroom, it's a little bit of the mystique has gone, shall we say. Yes. So that's not always a bad thing. But I think, echoing very much what Emma has said is, when I look back and think of some of the things that we've had to contend with, and I know many other people who've had to contend with much worse, just forgiving yourself and, just getting through it. If you're still talking to your partner, then you're probably doing pretty well. And, talk to your employer. It really does. I've seen some fantastic examples from employers, but that's not always the case. But, if you are trying to find a balance, talk to your employer. Ideally, they're already talking to you. But I think a lot of employers are, for the first time, focusing on well-being and understanding that flexibility pays. So you could talk talk with them and try and work out ways in which you can still be productive, but that suit the situation you're in at the moment. And I think one of the challenges is, for a lot of people, their situations are constantly varying. So particularly if you have school-age children, 1 minute they're home, 1 minute they're not. Then they're being homeschooled online, then they're not. Then they're back. Then I had one child in and one child out, and it's such a moving feast. So talk to your employer and keep those lines of communication open to try and find ways that you can still deliver or perhaps part furlough.
Sure. And at the start, we talked a little bit about, or you mentioned about being a mental health first aider, and certainly that's something that I've become aware of as a boss of a company. I haven't worn a baseball cap yet, by the way, but there's
still
always time. But there's still time. But talk to us a little bit about or explain to everybody listening about the mental health first aid thing, because that's something that I've learnt of recently through you, and I think it's important that you can talk about that a bit.
Yeah, so a mental health first aider is like a physical first aider. So in the same way that if somebody has a physical injury at work, there is someone there who is normally trained to keep that person safe, to reassure them, and if need be, to signpost them to other help, then that's the same with a mental health first aider. So it's about having those skills to be able to talk to someone who is in distress, reassure them, keep them safe. And if they were in crisis, you would call 999, or you can talk to them about taking some other steps. So it's not being a counsellor, it's not being a psychiatrist, in the same way that your health and safety person is probably not a doctor. But it's about having someone who has some knowledge and a framework to work with to have better conversations with people who are in distress. And we know that it's part of the human condition. And I think we could be much better placed to understand that and support people who may need assistance at work.
Sure, yeah, I think it's great, and I know something that we as an organisation employ over 300 staff, and it's something we're going to be looking at when we get them back off furlough, which we're really looking forward to doing. That's an area that our senior team are kind of looking into to see how we can provide.
So I would just say as well that just having mental health first aid doesn't really solve things. A bit like just having someone qualified in first aid doesn't mean that you can't have a safety culture. That's part of a mix. It might not be right for every organisation, but if all you're doing is picking up the pieces, you probably haven't got the right infrastructure in place. So that holistic approach to it is, I think, it's a fantastic part of the mix, but it is about having that holistic approach that looks at people's mental well-being as well as their physical well-being while they're involved in work.
Given the industry that we're in, whilst we're focusing on helping people with their physical well-being, the mental well-being is just as important side of it, and the two kind of go hand in hand, that you have to deal with both of them. And I know that from loads of the comments that we've got from our members at the various different clubs and Shrewsbury and Homer and the other clubs that are on here, people talk about how much, whilst they miss some of the physical side of it, more than anything, I need to get back to the club because it makes me feel better. That's one of the main comments that we get from members, and so the two do go hand in hand, if I can get my words out. So I think that's really important. Certainly something we're going to be looking at a lot more, about how we address a number of those issues, not just for our staff, but maybe supporting our members as well. Laura, you talk a little bit about it from the home. So we've talked a bit about the work side of it. Talk a bit more about it from the home perspective, because there'll be people like me that are used to spending a fairly limited amount of time at home and maximizing out with the family time that I get. I've probably, my daughter that just came in here a moment ago because she'd forgotten to take her homework out that I'd reminded her to, I've probably seen her more in the last year than I had in her previous 11 years, if I'm honest, just because we've been at home for so long. So that has changed the dynamic. I mean, for us, fortunately, in a great way, in a good way, in a positive way. But that whole home dynamic has changed. So again, what are you sort of talking to your clients about in terms of how we take the positives from the situation that we're in and cope with the additional pressures?
So, and I think it really depends on what age your children are at as well. But very much starting with the mindset of kind of surrendering into this season of life. It's not forever, and just really noticing where you are and what really, is capable and what is a priority for you. So I like to put little things in place. So, otherwise we can kind of be just on standby all the time. We're never switched off. We've always got our phones with us now. We can always just read this email. We can always just answer this call, always just do this thing. But actually, if we're always on standby, then we're never allowing our brain time to, switch off, and we're never actually going to be present in the moment with the children and the family and the other things that we've got going on at home. So it's surrendering into where you are in the first instance, trying not to force anything, but also, like you say, kind of extracting the pleasure and the gratitude for each moment. So yes, you might be forced into, I don't know, sitting on the floor for half an hour with the children and playing whatever game they want to play, or running around playing floor is lava while you're trying to send emails. But actually kind of taking the positive from that. We're not going to be in that situation again. Kind of, the way that I like to see it is, how do you want to create this memory in hindsight? How do you want to look back on it? Do you want it to be a positive experience? What's the kind of big vision parenting you've got? Can you allow yourself those few moments to be with them exclusively, so that they really get your attention, and it's a beautiful few moments, so that then you can pull away again and then go and do the emails, make the calls, do the things, and really do each of them intentionally. So you have intentional moments with the children, you have intentional moments with your work, and so each will always be getting that better version of you, rather than you're half here and you're half there. It's kind of, actually, no, I'm focused on this, I'm focused on that. And then outside of that, when it comes to like looking after yourself, you know, I've had to set a rule of not looking at my phone first thing in the morning. That's one thing that can just easily happen. Roll out of bed, the alarm goes off, oh, these notifications, here we are, you know. But putting some boundaries in place for, you know, my own well-being. And again, how do I intentionally want to start the day? Like yourself, Dave, taking the dog out for a walk, you know that that's going to boost your mood, you know you're going to get some exercise, you know, being out in nature is stress reducing anyway. And a good brisk walk, a good 15-minute brisk walk actually perks you up more than a cup of coffee in the morning. So, you know, what actually can you fit into your day? What boundaries can you put in place to allow yourself that time to actually unwind and recalibrate? So not looking at my phone first thing in the morning, and then also switching it off at a certain time at night as well, and not just always being just on standby, you know, allowing yourself to switch off, and immersing yourself in things that are actually nourishing. You know, it's very easy to kind of just watch the TV and want to numb out that way. And obviously there's a place and a time for that. But what can you do to really fill your cup in that time? What do you find nourishing that's going to help set you up for the next day, that's going to fuel you the next day, kind of, you know, physically and mentally? For myself, I love a bubble bath. I love reading. I love meditating. You know, I love all these things. And even if you can only get like 10 minutes, it just makes all the difference in terms of your mental and physical well-being and your resilience and your ability to kind of carry on with what life's going to throw at you next.
Sure. Emma, anything from your perspective that you, in terms of how you've adapted in this situation?
Well, what came to mind when Laura was talking was something wonderful I heard from a client. And when she was feeling down, she had a happy list and she kept it in a book. And what it was on this list was all the things that would bring her happiness, from a bubble bath to reading a favourite book. And so when she felt down, she just opened it up and picked one and did it. And I just thought that was just inspired. So I just wanted to share that, really, because I thought, I thought it was lovely, and it's so simple and yet really effective. So she'd made that list for her, and then that was her choice to. Yeah.
Interesting you say that, actually, because that's one thing. My 15-year-old she read it somewhere, she saw it on TikTok, I don't know where, but she got it from somewhere. But similar idea. But she basically writes down at the end of every day something that she's grateful for that's happened in that day. So before she goes to bed, she writes down something she's grateful for, and they're all going in a jar. And then at the end of the month or the end of the year, she's going to pull them out and kind of read them and remind them to herself. So she's building up this jar with these pieces of paper in about things that you're grateful for. And it's just sometimes in the midst of, you know, there have been some really tough, difficult times, but her doing that has made me think about, actually, there probably is something, even what has felt like a pretty desperately bad day that I've had, there's something still that we can actually find to be grateful for. And it's a good sort of reset of your attitude and mind, isn't it, to do that, for sure. So what are the things you think that we will have learnt coming out of lockdown that will actually help us? I mean, hopefully, you know, the vaccines seems to be doing its job. It's certainly being rolled out very quickly. Even someone as young as me has already had their vaccine. So you know, hopefully before long we'll be back to normal, or heading back that way. What are the things that have happened in lockdown that you think, both as a society but also maybe individually, that we're going to take from this that will help us going forward?
Shall I? I can offer something. I do think, you know, I've worked in organisations for sort of 15, 20 years, and I do think for the first time, not all organisations, but for the first time, a lot of organisations have thought seriously about employee well-being, and I think that's a really positive thing. My hope is that then translates as we move forward. but I've worked with some clients who have transformed what they've done, sometimes because they've had to, if I'm honest, but maybe the end justifies, the means that they've had to do that. But I think that's a really positive thing. And I think Laura was saying earlier about I don't believe in the death of the office, but I think that hybrid that we're all now talking about will probably be a positive thing, in that, we won't all be rushing around necessarily quite so much, and that we can get some of the best of both worlds. So hopefully those will be two things that we might see.
I agree with you, Lindsay, and I'm super passionate about the employee wellbeing piece, and I've said this for a long time. So many businesses, until the pandemic, it was very much employee wellbeing was just this like CSR tick box. Right, that's done once a year now. Everyone's well, let's move on. But that's not the case. And actually, having this ongoing support is so it's just a must now. It's just a must these days. And businesses and organizations have a maintenance contract for the photocopier. You've got a contract for your photocopier, a guy that comes in every however long, ticks it off, makes sure that the photocopier is working fine. But have we got the same for the staff? Have we got the same for the team, for the people? Who's checking in on them and making sure that they're working fine? So I think actually that's probably one of the best things to come out of this pandemic, is now everyone really sees the value of that, and actually what a difference it's going to make in organizations and to people's lives.
And it is, isn't it? It's about value. It's not doing it because you have to do it. It's when you see why that matters and what difference it makes, both on a human, commercial, and just the value level that it brings to the business.
For sure.
Absolutely.
I think the companies that are going to really thrive or are thriving now are those that have been really open and honest with their staff, because positivity only goes so far, and I think staff value the openness much more than empty and hollow optimism. So I think those companies that are prepared to be open and also give their staff a voice and make sure they are heard, not only will enhance the engagement and the well-being of the staff, but also they will stand to benefit from the creativity and the business acumen of their staff. So I think, those companies that really recognise this is very much a team effort will see the benefit. But also, it's going to be important over the next few months as the furlough scheme comes to an end. There'll be a lot of people that, whilst we might be seeing the vaccine being rolled out, so maybe health is less of a concern, but financial security, I think, is top of many people's lists. Mm-hmm. So that has to be recognised and that has to be talked about. It can't be swept under the table. So I think companies that put their hands up, say, yes, this is tough. What can we do as a company, as a team, to drive the company forward and secure everyone's livelihood? I think that would be really important. And so the more companies that give their staff a voice, I think will benefit, because we all want to be heard, and I genuinely believe that really underpins mental well-being, because it's just so important.
That's a good point. It's something we've certainly tried to work really hard at. Was it was this, particularly when we went into this lockdown, and obviously our health clubs and spas were shut. They've been shut for 8 months. It's been, how do we maintain a connection with the staff, and how do we try, I think your point, try to be real with them. We need to be honest. We can't pretend that this isn't a threat to the business, because it very clearly is, but also to give them as much reassurance as we possibly can, and stay in contact with them. And I think that's been a real importance from our perspective. I think for everybody, part of your wellness comes from what are the things that you can say are secure and that you can be sure of. And I think one of my things that I realized quite early on about this pandemic, which is something I'm going to certainly try and use going forward, is let me worry about the things that I can influence and affect, and the things that I can't influence or affect, which is like the pandemic and what's going to happen, is I just can't worry about it, because it will be what it will be. And so I need to actually focus on the things I can influence, how I talk to the staff, the things that I do for the business to keep it secure, and worry about that, because I can have an impact there, and I can't change the things that are outside of my control. And I think your thing about the false optimism is interesting. Actually, I was hearing someone else talk about that. They talked about the Stockdale principle, which was a guy that looked at the way that people behaved and survived in Vietnam when the American soldiers were caught, and they were stayed in what was known euphemistically as the Hanoi Hilton, which is where they were kept in jail. And the ones that survived over there were the ones that were realistic about their plight rather than particularly optimistic. Optimistic ones will be out by Christmas, and then Christmas would come, and then we'll be out by Easter, and we'll be home by the summer, and the longer that went on, they found that far more difficult to survive. And I think perhaps as a nation we've had a bit too much of the false optimism, and that's made, I think, what has made this really challenging for a lot of people is that we hopefully we've not been able to see the end, but hopefully we can now. It's been great chatting. We're kind of coming towards the end of our time now. There's a couple of things I just want to cover. I think you've all made some fabulous points, and there's been loads of comments coming in as well, positively. So I'm sure I'm going to go around and ask you if you sort of got one sort of closing tip or a piece of advice that you'd give to people to take away on this subject, as sort of your closing piece of advice, and then also just where people can find you, because I'm sure that some people would love to explore a bit more about what you've got on your websites and the work that you do. So we'll start with you, Lindsay, this time. So yeah, just any advice that you've got as a closing thought,
yes,
and where can people find you if they want to find more information?
I was going to get something up on my phone, and I was going to go first. So a little thing that I found really useful during the darkest of times is a little app called Pixels, and it's a mood tracker, and you can select a colour for every day, and you can also write a little note about what's happened that day. You can write what you like. And when I was my husband's very sick, we were isolating, I was sleeping by my desk, the kids it was horrendous. I kept this app, and it just gave me a sense of a moment at the end of every day, and then you can then look back and see patterns in your week or in your days. And I think when you feel overwhelmed, sometimes being able to and then I was able to look at the days that were my worst days and realize that what really was making the difference to me was how my children felt. So if my children were okay, I seemed to be able to cope better, and if my children were struggling, then that's when I felt bad. So just that very, very simple, and it's a really brilliantly designed app. It's free. The free version is great. I found that really useful to just help me cut through and focus. So you can look at what's making you feel really good. So perhaps it's all the days you do yoga, or some of the things that Laura was talking about that is really enhancing your mood, or perhaps it can help you work out some of the other things that you might want to focus. So that app is called Pixels.
So just spell that in case people want to search it up. So is that
Pixels.
Excellent, brilliant.
I was going to try and get it up on my phone to show you. But...
Well, you can be having a look while Emma gives us her tip and tells us where people can find out a bit more about.
Oh, here you go. This is my Pixels from the. Oh, I don't know if you can see that very well.
Oh yeah, okay. There we kind of get.
So you've just got all the little.
Blue. It looks very blue.
Yes, there's a few deep colours in there, but yeah, it's really good.
Okay, excellent, Emma.
My tip is just keep it simple and just keep embracing the little things each day that bring us joy. Whether it be the great coffee you had when you trudged through the mud on your dog walk, or the other day, because my nieces they're only young, and so they're my pen pals, and I got a letter from them both. And it was just absolutely gorgeous. So I framed it because it gave me so much joy. So it's just finding little things in your life that bring you joy, because I think that's something that we will carry forward, because holidays and the big events are great to look forward to, but they're only snapshots in time. What we have a lot of is our daily activity, and so I think looking for the joy in each day is something really valuable that will not just bring us joy and pleasure now. It's something that we can really carry forward. So I think that's what I want to make a habit, just finding the joy in each day. So
brilliant.
So that's my little tip. And I can be found at thestress.solution.co.uk and on LinkedIn and Emma Lockwood. So they're my details.
Oh yes,
Brilliant.
I forgot my details. Can I say?
Go on, Lindsay.
I'm also on LinkedIn. I can be found at Spark Team Comms. That's with 2 M's. Sparkteamcomms.com.
Brilliant, thank you. And Laura, tell us about your tip and where people can find you.
So I think for me, if people haven't tried it before, probably journaling. This is just, and it probably sounds more intimidating if you've never tried it before. It's literally just having a notebook that you can empty your thoughts into at the end of the day before you go to bed, get them out of your head. So it feels like, you've got a safe place to actually put them and store them, so that, you don't have to be thinking about them. You can actually get off and have a good sleep. But also journaling is just a great way to actually do more inner work. It's a great line of self-inquiry, really, just to find out more about yourself, and a great way of processing your emotions. So if you are really struggling, then actually journaling it all out and really understanding why and how. It's a really great tool to support you, mentally, really, and emotionally. So journaling, get yourself a lovely journal and pen, and make it a really nice experience at the end of every day.
And there's something lovely, isn't there, about actually writing stuff down? Maybe it's just because I'm old, but actually, there's nothing better than actually writing something nice in, and it's so different to the experience of what we used to generally of doing what we do on laptops. So yeah, I do find the actual act of just writing with a pen in a nice book actually, there's something quite relaxing about that in itself, rather than having to type onto a screen. But as I say, maybe that's my age.
No, I think it's very therapeutic, and I really encourage it with my clients. So yeah. Oh, and you can find me at laurabutlercoaching.co.uk.
Brilliant. Great. Well, I'd encourage you to have a look at those websites and find out a little bit more about Laura, Lindsay and Emma. We're coming to the end of our time, so thank you so much to everybody for joining us on Lockdown Live. It's been great to have you along again this week. Thanks again to Laura, Emma and Lindsay. It was great chatting with you. I knew this would be a brilliant panel, and you've not let me down, so thank you so much for all of your input. Let me just remind you that we'll be back next week. Now, next week Lockdown Live is going to be on Thursday night, and I'm back again, I'm afraid, but I'll be talking to Dr. Cole, and this is one for those of you that have had COVID. So he spoke a couple of weeks ago on here. He's the guy that's been putting together the training programs that all our staff are following. He's an exercise physiologist, but he's also a medical professor, and he's been working with the World Health Organization on understanding COVID and the effects of it. And next week is going to be dedicated to how do we get ourselves out of long COVID. So many people are struggling with the after effects of COVID-19, and their recovery is really long. So we're dedicating the 45 minutes or so that we've got with him to help you develop some strategies if that's the situation. So if you're listening or you're watching this later, it's next Thursday evening at 7:00, and we will be talking about how you can gradually and very gently, that's one of the main rules with exercise, help yourself to recovery out of long COVID. So that's next week. We've got one more then left before Lockdown Live will be parked, hopefully, and it will come back in another form, but not in lockdown, hopefully. And that last one in 2 weeks' time. Laura's coming back, so if you've enjoyed Laura's going to be back in 2 weeks' time, and we'll be talking about how to work effectively from home and get that home life balance right. So yeah, there's more to come from us, but thanks again to Laura, Lindsay and Emma. It's been great fun, and thanks so much for being part of it tonight. We'll see you all again soon, folks. Thanks for now, and enjoy the rest of your evening.